let's check out my 10 favorite tequilas of 2025. Or rather, my 8 favorite tequilas, plus a couple of bottlings I already finished that I figure we'll just add in post right there and right there. My name is Pedro Wolf, and I taste, review, and write about agave spirits for a living. Over the past few months, I have had 50 or so new tequila releases, and for the purposes of this video, I will be whittling it down to a slim 10 that I think showcase the best of the year had to offer. First, and perhaps most importantly, all of the tequilas we're going to be talking about today are going to be additive-free. No shade to anyone that loves additive-full tequilas, but I'm an additive-free guy, and that's what you're going to see on this list. Secondly, we're going to be ranking these tequilas according to both quality and price. A few weeks back, I published a ranking of my favorite tequilas of the year based purely on the number score I gave them when I tried. The list ended up with a $2,300 tequila from the last drop at number 1. Which was delicious in all the ways that count, but I wouldn't recommend it in good conscience to pretty much anybody except for an especially wealthy collector. This time around, I'm gonna rearrange the list just a little bit with an eye for accessibility and bottles you can actually find on the shelf without mortgaging your house. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 10, we have Lalo 2025 High Proof. Lalo was founded a few years back by the grandson of Mr. Don Julio himself, and originally they just had an 80 proof Blanco. That's the one you're gonna find on most liquor store shelves. That's the one that most people are familiar with when they think of Lalo. This is their most recent limited edition bottling. It's bottled at 100 proof and it was distilled to strengths, meaning that the distillers didn't add any water after the fact. This is exactly what an additive-free Blanco should taste like, without too many added bells or whistles. Unlike standard Lalo, which I find to have a really tropical, buttery profile, this one gets a little bit earthier and a little bit brinier, which are a couple of notes I find I always gravitate towards in an unaged expression. Though this was a limited edition release, I'm still seeing it online at its initial suggested retail price of $80, which I think is well worth the plunge. Coming in at number 9, we have Código 1530 George Strait Cowboys and Dreamers Special Edition Añejo. A pretty long name for a pretty great tequila. This one comes courtesy of King of Country George Strait himself, and it is the only celebrity-backed tequila on this list, so make of that what you will. This one was aged 2 years in barrels that previously held Napa Valley Cabernet wine, and the influence is present in full force. If you like cognac, fortified wine, or just red fall vibes in general, this is gonna hit the perfect spot. So far as flavor, I get tons of cherry, vanilla, rose petals, and raspberries with an undercurrent of chocolate dessert I'd liken to tiramisu in the best way possible. This one was also debuted as a limited edition and is also still available at its initial retail price of $130. I would say it makes a great gift for the holidays, very Christmassy, very seasonal, very tasty. At number 8, we've got Lágrimas del Valle La Sabina. This is a new-ish tequila brand that's doing things totally unlike any of its competitors on the market. Each year, the team travels across Mexico in search of a single Blue Weber agave field that they harvest and then bring back to the Cask Distillery for processing. The concept being that they're looking out for differences in soil, terroir, climate, etc. that will affect the flavor of the final batch. This year's Blanco release was distilled from agaves harvested in the state of Guanajuato, and I would say the flavor profile is pretty damn unique. Surprisingly enough, I get a big lemon curd vibe on the nose from this, and then on the palate, just tons of tropical fruits, guavas, mangoes, papaya, added with a little bit of minerality that ties it all together with a really nice touch. Releases from the Cask Distillery have been getting pretty expensive recently, if you ask me, but this one is available at just 65 bucks. It's a budget-friendly, delicious solo sipper I would recommend to absolutely anybody. At number 7, we've got Wild Common Añejo, also produced at the Cask Distillery and also a cult hit in its own right. The brand was founded by a former National Geographic photographer a few years back, and they've been doing some delicious tequila and mezcal bottlings that have had the fans drooling for all the right reasons. The recently released Añejo was aged for 12 months in ex-bourbon casks, and I don't have too much to say on this one other than that it is excellent and a great treat for people who really enjoy American whiskey in particular. The flavor is a melting pot of everything dark orange and sweet. Think toasted coconut, gooey caramel, pudding, orange rind, just all those delicious fall influences bottled up and distilled to 47% ABV. I noted in my review that this would work really well in a sort of gourmet Butterfinger cocktail, and I absolutely stand by that, if you have the money to spare. Wild Common Añejo costs a clean $100. Coming in at number 6, we have Cachasol Epic Strengths, a really tasty and boundary-pushing release that I finished in a couple of weeks. Quite unusually, this tequila uses IPA beer yeast during the fermentation process, a technique that was added by one of the co-founders who used to work for Dogfish Head Brewing. I, like many people, think that IPAs have gotten a little bit overrated over the past decade or so truth be told, I was a little bit skeptical about this release when I was first going into it. However, first appearances can be deceiving. What you get from this one is a really briny and vegetal profile. I'm talking artichokes, okra, olives, tons of sea salt, and a little bit of herbiness that I would liken to tarragon and dill. It feels very IPA inspired, but also still very respectful to the terroir and flavor profile of Blue Weber Agave. I would highly recommend this one inside a tequila dirty martini, and it costs around $75 per bottle. At number 5, we've got Suerte Extra Añejo. Limited to a total release of just 400 bottles, each available at $300 a pop, this is definitely the most expensive and unattainable tequila on this list. But if you can find it, I would say it is well worth the search. Aged for a well above average 11 years in a mix of American and French oak, this is a haymaker of an extra añejo that honestly doesn't have that much agave influence and instead leads full tilt into the barrel notes and a really unusual grape note that I haven't observed on any other aged tequila before. A few minutes ago, I mentioned cognac influences, and I think that's a really apt description for what's going on here. The palate on this one is really drying and tannic, with a lot of raisin, prune, and maraschino cherry notes that leap out of the glass. On the lighter side of the flavor spectrum, I also get some caramelized banana, fruitcake, and marmalade notes, plus a ton of cedar that you would expect from a tequila that spent over a decade in the cask. This is a special occasion kind of tequila, and if any of you are ever in New York City, I'd love to treat you to a glass. At number 4, we've got Campo Azul 1940 Still Strength, my vote for most underrated tequila of the year. I still can't believe how far under the radar this one flew for a lot of tequila fans and influencers. I've started to see some people talk about it over the past few weeks, but I still think it deserves 3 or 4 times more praise. Produced by Campo Azul, this one is bottled at a still strength of 53% ABV, just 2 notches shy from the legal maximum here in the United States. Impressively, it does not taste like rubbing alcohol or a throat burn, but instead just tons and tons of glorious roasted agave in every direction. This is the point in the video where I would usually give you some tasting notes. Peach rings, freshly mowed grass, sunlight in February, all that kind of silly stuff. But for this one, I'm gonna tell you it tastes like agave through and through. Works wonders inside cocktails, works great as a solo sipper, and shockingly is available for just $50 pretty much anywhere spirits are sold online. If you're working on a budget and you leave this video with just one recommendation, let it be Campo Azul 1940 Still Strength. It is the bomb. At number 3, we've got Cascanes Nuestras Raíces, which is not technically a tequila, but rather an uncertified agave distillate. Over the past few years, we've seen a lot of mezcal producers go uncertified, which usually means they don't want to play ball with regulatory authorities and they make small changes to the formula that don't conform to the exact definition of what mezcal or tequila is here in the United States or Mexico. The Cascanes team didn't drop too many hints about how this is different from a regular tequila, but what I do know is that the team actually used a repurposed car engine to process their Blue Weber agaves, which is a totally unheard of technique that I don't think has ever been done before, but I stand corrected if that's not the case. It tastes like a tequila plus a little bit of mezcal funk, right? You get a lot of that Blue Weber agave sweetness, but then underneath there's some mushroom notes, some parsley, and a little bit of moldy fruit that hit the perfect spot for me when I tried this for the first time. This is another bottle I wouldn't recommend to everybody, but if you like a niche mezcal or just a spirited experiment, I think its $130 price of entry is totally worth it. At number 2, we've got El Tesoro Yamazaki Cask Añejo, one of the most talked about tequila releases of the year and one that for me totally lived up to the hype. El Tesoro is a huge name in the additive-free tequila space, and Yamazaki Single Malt is probably the biggest or at least most recognizable name in the Japanese whiskey space. They're both owned by the same parent company, so in a lot of ways this collaboration feels like it's been a long time coming. The El Tesoro team matured their tequila in ex-Yamazaki casks for around 1 year, and what I really love about this bottling is that it feels like a marriage of 2 totally different spirits that doesn't let either influence overwhelm the end result. On the one hand, you have your El Tesoro notes, your agave, your minerality, and your trademark tropical fruit that I associate with a lot of their Blanco expressions in particular. But then you've got your classic Yamazaki notes, your dried fruits, apricots, almond nuttiness that kind of tastes like marzipan, and this unmistakable lick of ginger on the finish that is just totally unlike any other añejo on the market. If you ever feel like añejo tequilas are starting to taste a little samey, then this is the one I would recommend. It hit the market at a suggested retail price of $200, and it comes in a nice tall bottle. Coming in at number 1, drum roll please, is Viva Mexico Tahona Blanco. Truth be told, this is a brand I really wasn't that familiar with until recently, but their Tahona Blanco, bottled at 48% ABV and released just a few months back, absolutely blew my expectations away. The flavor profile on this hits a really cool trifecta of agave, herbs, and flower notes that feel very springtime. You've got some subtle grapefruit and hibiscus vibes, a little bit of thyme, brine, and basil notes that give it that herbal edge, and then, of course, all of the agave you would expect from a Tahona crushed Blanco. It's complex and punchy, yet also totally accessible. I don't have much else to say other than that this is the undisputed GOAT of 2025, at least for me. It costs $80, and I think it is worth every last penny. The year might be drawing to an end, but there are still tons of tequila releases I didn't get a chance to try over the past 12 months. So if you have a personal favorite bottling that didn't make it onto this list, please drop a recommendation below in the comments and I'll be sure to get to it. As usual, my name is Pedro Wolf and this is the Tequila Pour. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're interested in anything Mexican agave spirits. I'll see you next time.